The Snowball, Warren Buffett and the Business of Life by Alice Schroeder. Warren Buffett sits surrounded by icons and mementos for 50 years. In the hallways outside his office, Nebraska Cornhuskers football photographs, his paycheck from an appearance on a soap opera, the offer letter never accepted to buy a hedge fund called Long-Term Capital Management, and Coca-Cola memorabilia everywhere. On the coffee table inside the office, a classic Coca-Cola bottle, a baseball glove encased in lucite. Over the sofa, a certificate that he completed Dale Carnegie's public speaking course in January 1952. The Wells Fargo stagecoach, westbound atop a bookcase. A Pulitzer Prize won in 1973 by the Sun newspapers of Omaha, which his investment partnership owned. His son Peter and daughter-in-law Jennifer, his daughter Susan, and her boyfriend and two of his grandchildren all settled into their own cafe au lait leather club chairs, set around the 45-foot-long cabin. They swiveled their seats away from the curved wall panels to give themselves more space as the flight attendant brought drinks from the galley, which was stocked with the family's favorite snacks and beverages. A pile of magazines lay nearby on the sofa. Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, Fortune, Yachting, and The Robb Report, The Atlantic Monthly, The Economist, Vogue, Yoga Journal. She brought Buffett an armload of newspapers instead, along with a basket of potato chips and a cherry Coke that matched his red Nebraska sweater. He complimented her, chatted for a few minutes to ease her nervousness at flying for the first time with her boss, and told her that she could let the co-pilot know that they were ready to take off. Then he buried his head in the newspaper as the plane rolled down the runway and ascended to 40,000 feet. For the next 2 hours, 6 people hummed around him, watching videos, talking, and making phone calls, while the flight attendant set out linens and bud vases filled with orchids on the bird's eye maple dining tables before returning to the galley to prepare lunch. Buffett never moved. He sat reading, hidden behind his newspapers, as if he were alone in his study at home. For more than a year, financial pundits had made sport of Buffett, a has-been, an emblem of the past. Now, on the eve of the millennium, Barron's, a weekly must-read on Wall Street, put Buffett on its cover with the headline, "Warren, What's Wrong?" The accompanying article said Berkshire had stumbled badly. He was running a pamplona of negative press like nothing he had ever experienced. "I know it's going to change," he repeated over and over. "I just don't know when." His shrilling nerves were urging him to fight back. Instead, he did nothing. He did not respond. "I felt like I'm on my back, and there's the Sistine Chapel, and I'm painting away. I like it when people say, 'Gee, that's a pretty good-looking painting,' but it's my painting. And when somebody says, 'Why don't you use more red instead of blue?' Goodbye, it's my painting. And I don't care what they sell it for. The painting itself will never be finished. That's one of the great things about it. The big question about how people behave is whether they've got an inner scorecard or outer scorecard. It helps if you can be satisfied with an inner scorecard. I always pose it this way. I say, look it. Would you rather be the world's greatest lover, but have everyone think you're the world's worst lover? Or would you rather be the world's worst lover, but have everyone think you're the world's greatest lover? Now that's an interesting question. Here's another one. If the world couldn't see your results, would you rather be thought of as the world's greatest investor, but in reality have the world's worst record? Or be thought as the world's worst investor when you're actually the best? In teaching your kids, I think the lesson they're learning at a very, very early age is what their parents put the emphasis on. If all the emphasis is on what the world's going to think of you, forgetting about how you really behave, you'll wind up with an outer scorecard. Now my dad, he was 100% inner scorecard guy. He was really a maverick, but he wasn't a maverick for the sake of being a maverick. He just didn't care what other people thought. My dad taught me how life should be lived. I've never seen anybody quite like him. When I was a kid, Warren would say later, I got all kinds of good things. I had the advantage of a home where people talked about interesting things, and I had intelligent parents, and I went to decent schools. I don't think I could have been raised with a better pair of parents. That was enormously important. I didn't get money from my parents, and I really didn't want it. But I was born at the right time and place. I won the ovarian lottery. Buffett always credited most of his success to luck. When it came to his recollections of his family, however, he was creating some of his own reality. Few would agree he couldn't have been raised with a better set of parents. When he talked about how important it is for parents to have an inner scorecard when raising their kids, he always uses his father's inner scorecard as an example. He never mentioned his mother. By the spring of 1942, his hoard totaled $120. Enlisting his sister Doris as a partner, he bought 3 shares of a stock for each of them, costing him $114.75 for his 3 shares of City Service Preferred. I didn't understand that stock very well when I bought it, he says. He only knew that it was a favorite stock that Howard had sold to his customers for a year. The market hit a low that June. The City Service Preferred plunged from $38.25 to $27 a share. Doris, he says, reminded him every day on the way to school that her stock was going down. Warren says he felt terribly responsible, so when the stock finally recovered, he sold at $40, netting a profit of $5 for the 2 of them. That's when I knew that he knew what he was doing, Doris recalls, but City Service quickly soared to $202 a share. Warren learned 3 life lessons from this. Not to overly fixate on what he paid for a stock. The second was not to rush unthinkably to grab a small profit. He learned these 2 lessons by brooding over the $492 he would have made if he had been more patient. It had taken 5 years of work since he was 6 years old to save the $120 to buy the stock. Warren had studied the lives of men like Jay Cooke, Daniel Drew, Jim Fisk, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Jay Gould, John D. Rockefeller, and Andrew Carnegie. Some of these books he read and reread. One of them was special, not a biography, but a paperback, written by former salesman Dale Carnegie, enticingly titled How to Win Friends and Influence People. He had discovered it at age 9 or 8. Warren knew he needed to win friends, and he wanted to influence people. He opened the book. It hooked him from the first page. If you want to gather honey, it began, don't kick over the beehive. Criticism is futile, said Carnegie. Rule number 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. This idea riveted Warren. Criticism was something he knew everything about. Criticism puts people on the defensive, Carnegie said, and makes them strive to justify themselves. It is dangerous because it wounds people's precious pride, hurts their sense of importance, and arouses resentment. Carnegie advocated avoiding confrontation. People don't want criticism. They want honest and sincere appreciation. I'm not talking about flattery, Carnegie said. Flattery is insincere and selfish. Appreciation is sincere and comes from the heart. The deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important. Although don't criticize was the most important, there are 30 rules in all. Everybody wants attention and admiration. Nobody wants to be criticized. The sweetest sound in the English language is the sound of a person's own name. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and empathetically. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Let the other person save face. Warren had never bought any significant money to buy a company, but they figured the margin of safety reduced the risk and interest rates were cheap at the time. Profits in department stores were thin, but as those profits grew over the years, the interest on the debt would stay the same and increase in the profits would flow to themselves. If the profits grew over the years, buying Hochschild Kahn was like the story of a man who buys a yacht, says Munger. The two happy days are the day he buys it and the day he sells it. Susie set to work decorating the place in Emerald Bay with casual rattan furniture. She installed a separate telephone line for Warren, who spent most of the time when he was in California watching business news on television and talking on the phone. The personal concerns and Joe Rosenfield were drawing her husband in the opposite direction from California toward Washington and electoral politics. The Buffetts hosted a dinner in Omaha for Senator George McGovern, the 1972 Democratic candidate for president, and Warren had given money to Allard Lowenstein, a former congressman known as the Pied Piper. By 1985, the unique business model that Buffett had designed began rising to its potential. No other business resembled it, and this structure would enable the dramatic compounding effect that propelled the shareholders' wealth. Then there came the moment when Goldberg found the capstone to the structure. Afterward, the numbers would gush blacker than oil well. One day, says Buffett, I was down here on a Saturday, and Mike Goldberg walked in with Ajit. Ajit Jain, born in 1951, had an engineering degree from the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology in Kharagpur, and had worked for IBM in India for 3 years before getting his business degree from Harvard. Ajit was spectacled and hard-nosed like Buffett and Munger. Nobody would ever put one over on Ajit. Buffett saw himself in Ajit, who quickly rose in his esteem to share Mrs. B's pinnacle. He had no background in insurance. I just liked the guy. I would love to glue myself to Ajit. You can argue that Ajit was when we discovered the electric light. It was huge. It was huge compared to anything we'd ever done at Berkshire.